Hi, everybody, and welcome to Exegetically Speaking, a podcast of the friends and faculty of Wheaton College, Wheaton, Illinois, and the Lanier Theological Library in Houston, Texas. My name is David Capes, and I am the Senior Research Fellow at the Lanier Theological Library and a former dean up there in Wheaton at the School of Biblical and Theological Studies. Our purpose in these podcasts is really very simple. We want to promote the study of biblical languages, Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, so we can read the Bible more faithfully, study it more fully, and not just read it, but to live it. Joining me today on Exegetically Speaking is Dr. Andrew Abernethy. We call him Andy around here. He's Associate Professor of Old Testament and Greek Coordinator for the Master of Arts in Biblical Exegesis. Andy, it's good to see you.
Yeah, always great to have you back here, David.
Thanks. I look forward to it again next time. Hey, we're going to talk today about Jonah. One of the first books I read in Hebrew was the book of Jonah. It's not hard compared to some of the Hebrew.
Yeah, it's a great book to start with.
You get a little poetry in there. You get a little narrative and such. As there's kind of some clear discourse markers within the text. But tell us a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, about fearing God and Jonah in chapter 1.
Yeah, so wanted to draw our attention that the Hebrew helps us see something that sometimes is obscured in translation. It's this repeated idea of fearing God with the root yareh in Hebrew, which sometimes gets smoothed over in translations. And there's a really cool, ironic play on this term that I want to walk us through.
So part of that is the appearance of the word and the way translators have chosen to render it. And sometimes those translations miss a few things or cause us to miss a few things.
That's right. So let's look at the first verse that this idea of fearing the Lord comes up, and it's with Jonah. Jonah's been kind of lounging in the boats, the bottom of the boat. And
he's taking a Mediterranean cruise. Right?
Exactly. He's kind of on cruise control, and then the sailors come and say, all right, tell us, who are you? And he says this. He says, Ivri Anochi, means I'm a Hebrew. Then he goes on and says, and the Lord, the God of the heavens, Ani Yareh. So this Ani Yareh means I fear. And in some translations, it's usually translated I worship Yahweh, the God of the heavens. And then it goes on to say that this one who made the sea and the dry land. So here you have Jonah saying Ani Yareh. Yareh means I fear the Lord. Now, here's the thing, David. All right, you got Jonah. What's he doing here? He's fleeing from the Lord.
Fleeing from the presence of the Lord, the very face of God. He doesn't want to see it, right?
Does he really revere or fear the Lord?
Yeah.
And here it's ironic with this profession by Jonah. It's a very pious profession. He's saying, I fear this Lord, the one who made the heavens and the sea and the dry land. But he's trying to flee from the dry land by heading into the sea. If he's really fearing the God who made these things, would he be trying to flee into this very sea? So naturally, when we read Jonah, this kind of renegade prophet saying, Ani Yareh, I fear the Lord, you're like, oh, yeah, Jonah, sure you do.
Yeah.
But
your actions prove that you do. Right?
That's right. But we're all like that in a way. Especially when you're a professor or pastor, you get really good with the mantra, but maybe your life isn't lining up. And that's part of the punch in the gut, I think, that the book of Jonah is trying to give us, is saying, hey, look, you might have the profession or being able to say the right words, but what about how you live? And this profession by Jonah that Ani Yareh, I fear the Lord. It just strikes us as we see Jonah's actions to not quite line up.
Doesn't quite, But what happens next? That's what's very interesting.
Here's what's striking, and again you see this in Hebrew. Right after he says this, Ani Yareh, we get Vayireu ha'anashim. It says, and the men feared. We get Yareh again.
Yeah.
And what did they fear? Yira Gedolah, a great fear. Right. So it's the sailors these pagan sailors who are fearing this great fear after they hear of this one who Jonah's professed to be following. They're the ones here that are afraid, but it's more than just this normal fear of like, oh, we're really scared. Because this develops in verse 16. You know, Jonah's been thrown into the sea, and all of a sudden, the sea becomes just completely still. And we're told in verse 16 exactly what we were told in verse 10. We're again told, and the men feared a great fear. So they feared when Jonah told them this news about Yahweh, the God of the sea and dry land. And now they're fearing a great fear after the sea has dried up. But guess what is added? It's not just simply that the men feared a great fear, but now in verse 16, you get Adonai added in.
Yes. The very name of God.
Yeah, and it goes on to say, and they sacrifice sacrifices to the Lord. So if we ask a question, okay, who can make the pious profession in this chapter? Jonah. But who is the one that the narrator is pointing us to as those who truly fear the Lord? Shockingly, it's these pagan sailors who see in light of who God is in the sea as God brings it to a calm, that they revere Yahweh. So it's a great play on this Yahweh all the way throughout this first chapter.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I had not seen that exactly before. And the addition of God's name in there makes a big difference, doesn't it? Because it gives the object of their fear.
Yes,
Not
absolutely.
do they just fear, sort of have generalized anxiety, but they have fear directly related to the Lord God. And the sacrifice just seals it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, we talked about it a moment ago, that even when Jonah's doing the wrong thing, he's making converts. He's confessing the faith, and that ends up having a positive effects upon these pagans on the sea.
Yeah.
And will in chapter 3.
Yeah.
Upon those who the reluctant prophet goes and preaches in Nineveh.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of the questions here, though, is will Jonah end up being someone who, like these pagan sailors, come to truly fear the Lord? And by the end of the book, God is still asking him questions about whether his heart will align with God's or not.
Yeah. And we're sort of left wondering, aren't we? I mean, the story is unresolved in a way. We don't know whether Jonah, surrenders and says, okay, God, let your heart be mine.
Yeah, and it points us back to us as readers. What will we decide?
Yeah.
Will we get on board with God's desire to show mercy,
Yeah.
to truly revere this God of the sea and dry land?
And even to our enemies, right? Yeah. Even to those who are sworn enemies at one point.
That's right.
It's a great read. Thanks so much for being with us today, Dr. Andrew Abernethy.
Great being with you, David.
Thanks to Ian Rosine, Rebecca Larson, and Silvio Vasquez, who help us produce this podcast. Thanks as well to John Lansma, our Wheaton-based director, who makes this podcast possible. We're grateful to Phil Keggy for our music. If you want to study biblical languages, then you need to consider Wheaton College. Whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student, we have amazing programs, a first-rate faculty, and some of the best students in the world. So go to the website, www.wheaton.edu, and look for modern and classical languages. Get started today. If you have questions about this or any of our podcasts, we'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions or questions about any passage in the Hebrew Bible or Greek New Testament, send us an email and we'll see if we can get one of our experts to weigh in on that for you. Our email is exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. That's exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. Thanks for listening.